evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Canadian Football Fanatics Weekly Show. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in tonight. We are almost there, everybody. 4 teams left to decide who will punch their ticket to the 111th Grey Cup in 2 weeks from now. I cannot believe we only have 2 more weeks, 3 more games this season in the CFL before the long-dreaded offseason hits. I'm ready for it, but I'm not all at the same time. Blake and I have chatted about that here multiple times in the last few weeks. That bittersweet ending is only a few weeks away, and the offseason will be here before we know it. But as always, I'm joined by my right hand man, Blake. Blake, thanks for joining me, buddy. How you doing? Hopefully, Blake
Cole.
is.
Like it was like the game end the
Sorry,
game
Blake,
ended and it was like
having a little troubles hearing you though, buddy.
can you
But
hear me?
yeah, keep going.
Yeah, it was the game ended and there was some emotions. I talked to some people and it was like I know you and I have talked privately. It was more so it wasn't the fact that like being a diehard, usually the loss sucks and you just like mull about it for a week or so. And it wasn't even that. It was more so like the show and everything that you and I have built. I mean, of course, it's not done yet. We still have this week. We still have Grey Cup, and I'm sure we'll do a show after the Grey Cup as well. But it was like, man, like we did all this, and like the Lions just flamed out. Like it's like I hate to use that old Arizona Cardinals. I believe it was like Dennis Allen or something like that. But the Lions are who we thought they were. Like they were a mediocre team the whole season. And unfortunately, they were mediocre in the West semifinal. And it's what's going to cost them a chance to host a Grey Cup on their home field in a week and a half's time.
Yep, and instead, Blake, they will be watching. I would imagine for those that will be sticking around town, will be taking in the festivities and watching who will be raising the 111th Grey Cup in a few weeks. So, Blake, let's get into it. One last 3-minute drill. I guess actually no, that's a lie. Couple last 3-minute drills. We got next week as well. But Blake, 3-minute drill, East-West semi variety, buddy. So let's get into it. That started off with the East semifinal last weekend, last Saturday. And it was a pretty exciting game. It was a pretty exciting first half, anyway. So there was damn near 100 points put up. The final score was 58-38 for the Toronto Argonauts. Damn near put up 60 points themselves. And I'll be honest, I think things kind of broke open for Toronto and changed um, going into halftime there with the unfortunate lack of execution on the squib kick ends up kind of dribbling, 10 or so yards, giving Toronto excellent field position, and they're able to cash in with a score before half, and then double dip in the second half as well. And really, from that point on, really didn't look back from the first half that was much closer. And I think this game was a little bit closer than the final score of the 58-38. You look back at the final fourth quarter of that game. Unfortunately, the way it was going, I kind of tuned out of that game a little bit, or kind of stopped paying attention to that game with what was going on in the Canada West at the time, and was kind of going back and forth between those two games. And remind folks that Toronto added 2 late pick sixes late there in the fourth quarter to kind of add insult to victory for Ottawa. I believe they had 24 fourth quarter points all in all. So really a strong showing from Toronto, and they one step away now from punching their ticket to the Grey Cup. And I'm really interested to see how they match up with Montreal. Montreal hasn't had a lot to play for in the last 6 or 7 weeks, and Toronto, I think, is a hot team that's ready to go on a run right now. So it should be interesting. I think it is to be said. I'm interested to hear Shane's thoughts once he joins us. I think it's a very I don't know about successful season, but a very positive season for that organization there in Ottawa. After last year, the way that they're able to come in this year, the start that they got off to, and I think it was kind of a Cinderella story if they were to turn things around, and get to the Grey Cup year one, getting into establishing some foundation for this new regime, Bryce and whatnot. Drew Brown, I think, showed that he was pretty promising at times. The guy damn near threw 60 times on Saturday, which is unbelievable. I think if they had a run game, if they didn't have to let Rock Armstead because of the situations that were going on there, I think this team would have been harder out against the Argonaut team with the run game, having to lean on and really only drop back and I think is just unfortunate for them. Another crazy stat from the game, Blake. I believe Ottawa finished with 40 minutes time of possession and lost the game. Toronto only had the ball for 20 minutes. I think it was under actually. I think it was like 19:43 or something like that. To 40 minutes time of possession for the Ottawa Red Blacks, and they just weren't able to get it done. And ultimately, that defense, who Shane kind of was worried about and warned us about, was their Achilles heel and wasn't able to get a stop or really stop the bleeding at all that night. So Blake, let's get into it, buddy. Let's rip the Band-Aid off, as you mentioned earlier, with the BC Lions falling to Coach's Riders. And I think probably should have been, probably should have seen this one coming if we're being honest. Terrible matchup with Saskatchewan and that defense. You look over the other side of the ball. Trevor Harris isn't, although he had a pretty good game, he's not going to, blow things away. And I think he does a great job of, with that defense, not turning the ball over. A.J. Ouellette had himself a game, 2 touchdowns on the ground. I think he was just under 100 yards as well. That all those, you put those all together, and I think that formula really is a good way to win, especially in the playoffs, and really interested to see this matchup as well versus Winnipeg next week. I think if that Saskatchewan defense can do what they've been doing all year and slow things down versus Winnipeg, and that offense who really hasn't been hitting at all cylinders all year long. Things could be very interesting, and I think it'll be a close, as always, one-score game in the fourth quarter, and who knows what might happen then. So Saskatchewan punches their ticket on an impressive 28-19 victory over BC. They did what they've been doing all year long, and that's been, I guess I shouldn't say all year long because AJ let miss some time, but they've been, having this mindset to, I feel like, get to the playoffs, be able to run the football, let Trevor Harris, uh, benefit off play action. He tends not to turn the ball over too much, and then that defense is just going to suffocate you and kind of choke things out, and really give their offense extra opportunities with that turnover ratio as well. I think they had 3 to BC's 0, if I'm not mistaken, and the Riders are going to meet up with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for the West Final next week. Blake, tell me where you want to take this, buddy. You can talk BC Lions for a little bit if you want. I know you weren't able to jump on the post-game show. What were your thoughts from the CFL semifinal weekend last week?
Yeah, my prevailing thought was that as much as you put it on your personal X, as much as people don't want to admit it, Toronto looks really, really scary right
Yeah,
now. Scoring 58 points. I know that's inflated, as you said, with those 2 pick sixes. If you take those away, it's a 1 possession game at the end of the game. The other thing that really stuck out to me, and I wanted to ask Shane about it, of course, I didn't get a chance to on Saturday, but I wanted to get your thoughts on Ottawa deciding they were down 2 scores. I believe it was 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter or something like that. Down 2 scores, 15 points to be exact. And they scored a touchdown to make it, you would think, a 1-point game. Conventional wisdom says you go for the extra point, hope that your defense gets a stop, and then try and get the ball back. And on what could potentially be the game tying touchdown, you go for 2. Ottawa decided not to do that. They decided to go for the 2 on that touchdown. They did not get it. It remained a 2 possession game. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for the Red Blacks. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up for the BC Lions, I'm sure you talked about it in the post game, but it was kind of disappointing the way the season ended. Not really for the Lions as a whole. We said a moment ago that we probably should have seen this coming. They were average at best this year, but arguably the Lions' best player all season long in their kicker, Sean White. I don't want to pin this loss on Sean White, but I think he deserves some of the blame. I mean, on that opening touchdown by Javon Catoy, who, not to toot my own horn, but I did say would be a big factor. He would make a big play. He did on that very first drive. Sean White missed the extra point, and then on a field goal attempt in the late in the third quarter, that at the time would have cut it to a one-score game, and I believe it was fairly short too, within 40 yards. He missed another kick. Both of those kicks hit the upright. The Lions didn't get any sort of points on either of them. And if Sean White makes either one of those kicks late in the game, it's a one-possession game. VA kind of doesn't have to force throws as he did late in that game. And I don't believe that he throws two of the three picks that he did in the game.
Yeah, I would agree that I think it makes it a little bit of a different game. I don't know ultimately how much it would have changed the. Well, I guess it's kind of it's very unfair of me to say how much it would have changed the outcome because we don't know. But I just feel like outside of that first drive, BC really didn't get anything going offensively. They kind of struggled versus that defense too. Whether you want to blame Jordan Maximic, totally ignore the run game and William Stanback. Um, they
Again,
really just couldn't generate much. I don't know the second down stat off the top of my head, but when looking after the game, it was something that was just pathetic. I want to say like maybe like 6 of 18 or something like that. Like absolutely brutal on second downs. They just didn't have it going. And like I just said earlier, we should have seen this coming. I know I was very negative a few weeks ago, but kind of proved me right in a way that this team, as you mentioned, is who we thought they are. And it's just leaves a lot of questions to be asked this offseason. And as you said, hoping for it to happen right away. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait till at least after Grey Cup. And I would expect probably not to make a decision too quick right after Grey Cup as well. There's going to have to be interview process and whatnot. And, those in closed door meetings behind are with Dwayne Vanu, president of the BC Lions, and Amar Doman. Another I think play that comes into this, we'll talk about in news and notes a little bit. Ryan Rigmain getting asked to interview as a potential GM candidate for the Edmonton Elks, I think is an interesting one as well, because if Dwayne Vanu and Amar Doman were potentially thinking about giving him a promotion, they wouldn't obviously want him to interview. So a lot of things are going to be in play here for the Lions in the next few weeks. And I would imagine they're going to be in the news before long after Grey Cup ends. So let's bring in our boys, as always. Let's start with Coach. Coach, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm
Coach,
good.
I was going to say, you have all the right to talk whatever shit you want for the time being anyways.
I'm gonna enjoy the
uh,
next 70 something hours. I'm happy. How my two favorite BC Lions doing?
and
I'm
that'll
doing
do it for us. I'll see you guys next week.
Oh no, don't rip the smoke. Y'all did all that talking, and I still standing. Ottawa's out, doggone BC's out, but we still standing.
All I'm going to
That is
say, because we don't have a leg to stand on right now, Coach, is you better keep that same energy next Wednesday night. Because if the Riders are in, I'm coming for you, and
You come
especially
right
because
on.
we're gonna see you the following days too. Because you say, "Oh, we made it farther than you." It don't matter if you made it around farther than us, because if you only got a ring, it don't mean a goddamn thing.
Y'all ain't seen a
So,
ring since
Coach.
2011. Don't talk.
Hey, I don't have a leg to stand on, so I'm gonna shut my mouth and I will say, Coach, you better pray you guys win this weekend. But let's bring in our other man to make it a fourth. Shane, all the way out in the East Coast. Shane, thanks for joining us, buddy. How you doing?
Not bad. Also, coach, why are you talking about 2011 like you guys have won anything in recent history? You guys are 2013. 2 years don't make big of a difference.
I'm sorry. Isn't your team just coming off a 4-12, four and whatever? Don't talk. Don't
Your
talk. I
team,
can
your team
talk.
has 4 wins. What are you talking about?
No,
Your
you guys
team's
had what? What was it last season? You guys had what? 4-2 wins. Don't talk.
oh cool. We matched you in Great Cup wins. Cool,
Ooh.
great.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Hey, all I'm saying
All right, boys.
is
A
you can't
rare
say
fourth
that
night.
like you haven't had a ring since 2011 when you only haven't had a ring since
Coach,
2013.
Coach,
Hold on
tell
now.
us
Hold on.
about.
Hold on. Whoa. I chose y'all to win. Y'all let me down.
Honored to win, so like I ain't disappointed. I knew they were going to lose, so you just had blind faith.
Chad Kelly jersey on the way. You already know that.
On the way. Coach, let's hear it. What are your thoughts last weekend? What are your takeaways? Toronto obviously winning, and your Riders.
Toronto did their thing, man. They did everything that they were supposed to. Defense was outstanding. Offensively, Chad Kelly did his thing. I mean, what can you expect, man? I mean, he did the one thing that I thought Ottawa was going to take away from him, and that was stepping up in the pocket and running. He got in Frankie Griffin's hit. I thought that was going to take him out, but nope, he was back in, lighting it up. Wayne McManus had them boys ready to go on defense. Kadeem Carey ran the ball very well. They were on all. They're a scary team to watch, man. So Montreal better have all their shit together.
I think it's an interesting one because of how long Montreal really hasn't had to play for anything, dating back to basically Labor Day. They locked up the division. We haven't seen the best form of Montreal here in the last 8 weeks, if we're being honest. So
Mhm.
I'm curious if Montreal can kind of get back into form really fast, and especially off a bye week, or this hot Toronto team is going to maybe catch them, sleeping a little bit here. But Shane, what are your takeaways, buddy? Ottawa, wherever you want to go. Saskatchewan doesn't matter. Or technical difficulties.
Under.
Shane, you there, buddy?
We lost Shane.
I would imagine
All
that's
right, there
some.
we go.
Oh, there we go. Shane, what are your
Uh,
thoughts, buddy?
I mean, Money Hunter isn't a safety. Clear as day, he got caught flat-footed over the top on those 2 touchdowns. Toronto was just the better team offensively and defensively. I think it was a back and forth game. Neither defense really made any strides until late in the game when Ottawa was forcing it. But I mean, when you have your quarterback throw for 61 attempts, when you don't have a true running game, you have very little room for error. So it was bound to happen. Very questionable roster decisions late in the year. But I mean, I'll still take a 9-8-1 record. It's better than they've had the last 5 years. Something to grow on, and hopefully they can make the adjustments they need in the offseason and take this momentum into next season and build off of it. Saskatchewan, I mean, I talked about it all year. BC's run defense being one of the worst, if not the worst in the league, and it came back to bite them in the butt with AJ and Armstead.
It hasn't even been the worst this year. It's been the worst for like 3 years.
Yeah, so like it came back. It was the big issue. Obviously, Sean White missing 2 kicks is uncharacteristic. That's 4 points off the table. It's a different game, but overall, Trevor Harris didn't have to win. They didn't force Trevor Harris to have to win that game for them. They allowed AJ to run the ball really well, which kind of made it easy on Harris, which we've seen previously with a Rick Campbell team, specifically against the Rough Riders. Believe it or not, you go back to that 2017 game in the East semifinals. It was the same way. The Rough Riders were able to run against them pretty well and set up pretty easy passes downfield. But man, I'm both the better teams won both games, and I have nothing to say.
Yeah, well said, actually, honestly, with the better teams winning both games. As we just lose Blake here momentarily, I guess we will fire up news and notes, boys. So, I mentioned Ryan Rigmain. We'll get into his possibility and kind of talk about some BC Lions coaching once Blake comes back here. But I was curious, I see Coach's little note under his name has changed this week to beat Winnipeg. But I believe for the last, I don't know, month, maybe 2 months, it has been Milligan for MOP. And now we officially have the news, Coach, that he will not be in the running. We have the finalists from both East and West divisions. And I was just curious, your guys' thoughts now that we know who's going to be in the running.
It's a joke that someone that's not even in the playoffs is up for most outstanding player.
I think it's a tough one for sure. Shane's obviously made it known on social media on the show of, basically a most outstanding offensive player award. It's pretty crazy to see that Tyrese Beverett wasn't even in consideration as well. But Shane, what are your thoughts on not seeing either defensive player nominated?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty vocal over the last 2 months that it should have been Beverett or Milligan. Kind of like those two should have been the nominees for MOP. the thing with Bo Levi, and I talked about it a couple of weeks ago, is like you take wins and losses out of the category. He had a great statistical season, and even if he makes the playoffs, he's probably the runaway favorite. So like, again, how much win losses do you kind of incorporate into your decision? I'm
I
not
did
sure.
I did see something pretty interesting because I normally would agree with like Blake's sentiment, but like I don't know if you guys followed Bryce, the guy that's like the PFF CFL guy.
Yeah.
He
Yep.
like he made a pretty good thread of like kind of making a case for why Bo Levi Mitchell should have been the MLP, and like he was making honestly some really good points, and like it was hard to argue kind of against that.
No, I
Um,
mean I agree. Like statistically, individually speaking, he had an MOP season. He just didn't have the wins that you usually add to a quarterback stats to kind of make him the runaway favorite. Like if they're 10-8 or 11-7 and they're hosting an East Division East semifinals, no one's questioning it, right? Like I think we can all agree that if he's in the
Agreed.
playoffs, no one's questioning it.
Agreed.
But because the Hamilton didn't make the playoffs, people are questioning it. But I still think it should be Milligan for what he's done, and even Beverett for what he's done. Like change the name and go and move on. Like just come out
To
and
the
change the
moon.
name and move on. Because if you're gonna ignore what the defense have done as your MOP, it's not really an MOP. It's a MOOP award. It's most outstanding offensive player, and just name it that and move on with move on with it, and then have your defensive player.
Coach, what are your thoughts?
I ain't got no words, man. And it's I just have nothing to say as far as, and nothing against Brady, nothing against Bo, but it's a popularity contest. That's just my thing. I said it before and I'll say it again. How it but I also I'll say this though. Roland would have had to do more as a defensive player to be in that conversation. I mean,
That's kind of what that PFF guy like said, because like when the CFL posted both Brady and Bo as like the finalists or whatever, he mentioned like kind of like no surprise in his mind because he thought both defenders had to have like historic type seasons, which like you could argue honestly, like Roland Milligan fucking like
But
pretty
what
damn.
more can a DB or a Sam linebacker do?
I don't know, but like
you have to break the record for tackles. You'd have to break the record for interceptions.
But like
is
realistically, in a CFL season, like those things aren't as easy. Like there's so much more that can happen. Like that as a defensive player you need to rely on versus a quarterback or a running back,
didn't
or even like a
is it
receiver.
who was the last? It was Sully, right? That won the last
Yeah,
MLB,
Yeah, he's a
Sully.
middle linebacker, or he's a
and
weak side linebacker.
I'm
You're in
guessing
the
like
play more often.
I'm guessing he like led the league in tackles,
Yeah, he had a great year, but he was all
4 or
like
5
again,
picks.
your weak side linebacker, your middle linebacker. It's like why like even at Darius Pickett being the East Final, uh, East Final for MOP when he was with Toronto,
Mm-hmm.
like as the same linebacker, I'm pretty sure Beverett had an on par season with what Darius did in Toronto. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but last I looked, he was pretty on par with a Darius that year.
Because Darius had like 110 tackles. He
Yeah,
had a couple picks. He had an all-world season.
yeah,
But
and he still didn't win
yeah,
because I
and
mean I think Oliveira had a great year that year.
yeah, but how many touchdowns did Brady have this year?
He had like 4.
And he still broke 1K. I mean, if
Here's the thing, like touchdowns also shouldn't be an indicator for running backs because we saw it in Ottawa. Fucking Caleb Williams broke the record with for the rushing quarterback touchdowns based off QB sneaks at the 1 yard line.
mm-hmm.
Right? You hand those off to a running back, you probably prop up their numbers a little bit more. So like how
more catches and all that stuff, but
right? Like I think for every position you can kind of make a caveat or like a how much weight does something have versus another, right? How much weight does a touchdown have versus yards, right?
Yeah. Make it an offensive award and Moop, as Blake said, I was just thinking the same thing, and call it a day.
And
Like,
call it a day. I was just curious. I was trying to pull up Sully's stats, but we'll just go through the rest of the award nominees. Or do you guys want to go out on a limb and maybe say who you think's going to win between Brady and Bo?
I think it should be Bo.
Bo.
It should be Bo, but it's probably going to be Brady.
To make up for last year. That's just my opinion. Last year, Brady should have won it. It was the right, it should have been the right call. So they'll probably give it to him to make up for last year's debacle.
Yeah, I mean, you put up Bo's stats are like 5,000 yards, like 36 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And he only had, 18 picks or something? Like, he didn't have, I don't think he had that many. But either way,
Which-
5,000 yards is still impressive and leading the league in touchdowns.
Which, considering how bad the team was, you would honestly think he would have more picks.
Yeah, because they were down so much.
That's
and people forget, their receiving core was hot garbage to start the year. Tim White didn't know what the hell he was doing. Their receiving core, Bo Levi Mitchell elevated that receiving core. Big time.
Yeah, the film don't lie. After Labor Day, they were clicking on all cylinders. When they lost Shamar Bridges, kind of took a little bit of a hit, but guys stepped up.
He didn't get benched because he was playing bad. He got benched because they weren't winning games.
Isn't that crazy? The MOP got fucking benched this year.
But he didn't get benched because he was playing bad. People were pissed that he got benched because he's like, they're not the reason your defense sucks ass. They were losing games that they were putting up 30-plus points. Yeah, he had 32 touchdowns, 5,400 yards, and 18 interceptions.
Ooh.
And he had I think a 75% completion rate.
And so that Bryson guy too, because a lot of people were trying to argue Bo's stat, Bo, all of his numbers were in garbage time, and that Bryson guy kind of broke it down, taking away all of his stats in the final 10 minutes of close games or whatever, and he still led the league in passing yards and touchdowns. So it was
this is why I want PFF to be open to even by subscription, but the CFL PFF stuff needs to be available to people who want it.
Yeah.
How does it make sense how they grade the offensive linemen and all that stuff?
I mean, I've talked to a couple of guys, and the grading system for offensive linemen for the CFL, because it's such a pass-heavy game, it doesn't favor the linemen, the offensive linemen, which is why a lot of offensive linemen, even though they perform high, they don't grade well because there's not a lot of run comparatively. The passing plays are very, how do they put it? They're very mute when running plays create a higher percentage score. Passing plays you don't move the needle as well.
Yep, fair. So let's get to most outstanding defensive player.
Milligan.
I would imagine I was going to say, we imagine we all agree with Milligan here, but it's no shame for, Beverett to kind of hang his head or whatever, losing this award. He had a phenomenal year. It's just the fact that Milligan had a even better year. So Beverett, huge season. I would imagine he's going to want to, be the one that's winning the Grey Cup instead. So I would imagine he won't be hurt if they get to the Grey Cup and repeat as champs, but we will see.
Can we just also give an honorable mention to Terrell Ford?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
He had a great
he
year.
tied with Milligan, right? With 8 or no?
No, I think Milligan had one more.
So he had 7 then?
I think so.
I believe so, yeah.
Because he had a drop in the final game that would have tied him with Milligan.
Hey, still a good year.
Yeah,
first full year as a starter, no?
And yeah, he was also playing safety for most of it, if I remember correctly. Which isn't easy to do. To have 7 interceptions as a safety.
Their offense was playing poo. That's why.
True.
They were on the field.
That's a lot of field to cover.
Much. Yeah, no, I'm just
to cover at safety.
I'm just bugging. But, Coach, anything you want to say about Roland Milligan and the season he's had before we get off?
Outstanding season he had. One thing I do want to see is, can he repeat it? You know, a lot of guys win Defensive Player of the Year, and there's a drop off. We saw that with Matthew Betts. Even though Matthew Betts' situation was different, I don't want to see Roland be a 1-year wonder. I'd like to see him come back next year and maybe not duplicate it, but raise the bar a little more to be in that conversation with, you know, Bo and Brady and MOP.
I think the interceptions are going to drop, but it's the tackles that I'm interested on if it repeats. Because like
the interceptions are going to drop because. Sorry, Shane.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the interceptions are going to drop because nobody's going to throw at him anymore.
Can his game? I mean, like, can his game evolve like a Darius and also get more tackles?
Part of playing boundary though, like he's just gonna get those targets regardless because it's the boundary side of the field. Like he plays boundary half, he's gonna get. Like teams obviously will stay away from him, but they have to, in a sense, throw to the boundary. Like they're not gonna go to the field instead.
No,
they're gonna throw there. It's just I would imagine it'll be more calculated next year because they know what's over there and what he's capable of.
Well, I'm curious if they're going to move him, right? Because this is what happened with Trey Roberson when he had that really great year and he went down south. And that's another thing. Is he going to go down south? Is this going to – same thing with Beverett. Are they going to get looks in the offseason down south and may not be back until kind of the halfway point of the year? Like, I think that needs to be talked about too. But I think it's the same thing with Trey Roberson is that he did really well at half. He went down south. He came back up, and they put him at field for a little bit. I don't know. I can't remember if he's gone back to half this year or if they've kept him at field. But generally, progression is if you do really well at half, you end up getting put or at least tried out at a field spot, and that is a completely different style of defensive back.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I think that USA, that NFL look for Milligan and Beverett is going to be interesting come January.
Yeah, something that hasn't crossed my mind yet for sure, but that's inevitable. Obviously, every year is players getting plucked to the NFL for at least half a season, whatnot. Go ahead, Blake. Though.
I think we've just seen over the last 3-4 years that it's harder and harder for players to jump from the CFL to the NFL. Like we've seen guys like Alex Singleton, who is of course out for the season, unfortunately for the Broncos, do it. But arguably the last 2 preseasons, Nathan Rourke, and I know we're the Lions guys, he's the one we always seem to bring up. But even a guy like Austin Mack, who by all accounts had an amazing preseason for the Atlanta Falcons. And what I was going to say was Nathan Rourke has arguably the play of the preseason the last 2 years, and he still couldn't even crack a roster.
I would say,
a lot of politics.
I was just going to say, no offense to any CFL player, but they're like uphill climb times 10, man. They're coming in, whole new draft class, free agent class,
and that's what I mean. That's my point.
Bottom of the
well, I think that's the thing with with Singleton, he had to go to Denver to get a chance because he wasn't gonna break in on the Eagles.
No way, not at all.
And I think the perfect example of the politics in the NFL is the report out of San Francisco. I think last year about how Shanahan went to Lynch and went to the owner. And was like, Brock Purdy's the best quarterback that we have, when it was Purdy, Lance, and Garoppolo. And he's like, Purdy's the best of the 3 quarterbacks. And he should be getting first-team reps. And everyone's like, no. We've invested in Lance. We've invested in Garoppolo. Look at that. Purdy ends up getting the shot and proved that he was the best of the 3. And I think that just perfectly sums up the type of politics that the NFL has with time invested, assets invested in players, that even if someone does come in and is better than another player, they're going to give the player they've invested in more of an opportunity to prove themselves than someone they haven't.
Yeah, it's bullshit in a way, but at the same time, it's why they're the NFL. So, um, I was curious about this one. I imagine that Blake's going to feel a type of way because Justin McInnis isn't going to be nominated for Most Outstanding Canadian. It will be uh, Idemi Berglund and Brady Oliveira. So, Blake, are you disappointed that Justin won't be at least nominated?
Yeah, I'm disappointed, but I'm not exactly surprised. Like when Brady was named the MLP finalist, like you almost have to give the nod for him for most outstanding Canadian as well. The only thing that did surprise me a little bit is, and that I've heard, is that there might have been like a little bit of vote splitting, if you will. And they gave Brady the nod for most outstanding player, so maybe they'd give Justin the nod for most outstanding Canadian. But as a whole, like I'm not super duper surprised, honestly.
Yep, it's unfortunate. It's just Justin had himself a great year, and Brady had, I think, a little bit of a better one. I think it'd probably be a little bit different if BC didn't struggle so much down the stretch, and um, maybe if they met Winnipeg in a not that the decision already been made, but I feel like if they had a little bit more of a positive end of the season, it could have been more of a discussion rather than BC's like floundering. Brady's having a good year, and he's a big part of why they're kind of finding their form down the stretch here. And I think was even more of an argument for why he is kind of the MOP MOC nominee this year. But I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the coach of the year between is it Jason Moss and Corey Mace? Is it, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken?
Yeah, I mean it's usually always the division leaders who get that nod. But what Mace done in
it
Saskatchewan
should be
over,
Mace.
like it should be Mace. But to
Yeah.
go back to the most outstanding Canadian, I think you're in the CFL getting 1,200 rushing yards is a lot harder task than getting 1,200 receiving yards. And when it comes down to production, they're always going to favor a running back who puts up that type of yardage versus a receiver who puts up that type of yardage. And we can agree or you can agree or disagree with that type of thought process. But again, you're generally hitting that line of scrimmage. That's what you're probably averaging 6+ yards a carry. When it comes down to the voting, I think that is what swings it for Brady over McInnis for most outstanding out of the West.
Yeah. Hard to argue against, and I would remind people he does have 1,800 all-purpose yards, so pretty damn good. I think it's only little over 100 less than what he had last year, and like Coach said, probably deserved it last year, and repaying the favor. I will take the time to stand. I said it first, as everyone yelled at me. But any more thoughts on the awards before we get to picks? I know Blake's got to go here soon.
No, I was just gonna say that if Brady wins most outstanding player, I think it's automatic that he'll win most outstanding Canadian.
I
Yeah,
think
I
he
would.
wins it
I,
no
I
matter
think he's
what.
gonna win most outstanding Canadian for sure. Berglund had himself like a good year, but like not close to Brady. So I would think he should win that. But most outstanding player, the more like I see the like wave for Bo, like maybe it isn't out of the realm of possibility for him to
It
take it
should
home
be
and
better.
not
It
make
should be
playoffs.
better.
I think like the more you actually do think about like it's not hard to kind of get around to the possibility of he was like the most outstanding player for his team. And I think if other players around his team could have helped him out, they probably would have been in the playoffs. They had 7 wins. Like
Yeah, their defense just shit the bed early in the year. Like if their
they're
defense was, above average early in the year, they probably kick Ottawa with how Ottawa was floundering.
hell, they could have
And
kicked
think about
BC
it.
out. BC was 8-9-1. We had one more win than them.
Think about it. They
Saskatchewan had
had
one more win
two
than them. Like they were right there.
they had 2 games against Ottawa that literally went down to the wire. And if they were able to punch it in near the end of the game, they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think about the special teams fucking debacles and stuff like that. They had wins and just
It's like
shit them
Edmonton.
away.
It's like
It
Edmonton
is
with
like
Boris
Edmonton.
Beattie. Like they had wins and they pissed them away. They had that 3 touchdown lead over Saskatchewan early in the year, going into the fourth quarter, and pissed it away. Like, those two teams could have had a lot better faith if they just had better defense.
Or didn't bench him. But any thoughts before we get to our picks, fellas? Or
No.
feel free to throw in any news and notes you guys wanted to. I just wanted to make sure Blake gets his picks in before he has to go.
No, the only thing is that you already mentioned the Ryan Rignaden thing. I believe it was Monday the Elks asked for permission, so the Lions have until next Monday to grant or deny that.
Yeah. I'm curious about the Ed Harvey, because like that one, if you guys don't remember how that exited in Edmonton,
It was nasty.
like it was a pretty nasty divorce by all reports. So maybe trying to do right, like the new ownership and new upper management, trying to heal and rebuild bridges, because like Harvey's a good GM. There's a reason why they won the Grey Cup, and like he built a Grey Cup team in 2015. And then he went to BC, and you know, I don't know. I think that's a very interesting one, given the history between the person and the club.
For sure. So, boys, let's get into it. Let's talk a little East-West finals. We'll start in the East first. Blake, what are your thoughts, buddy? Toronto going to Montreal, 12 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Or not.
Was that for me, Cole?
Yeah, that was to you, buddy.
Oh, sorry. I had it on mute there for a second.
All good.
I think I am going to go. I need to gain a game on you now. I know I lost a game on you last week. I think I'm going to go with the Toronto Argonauts in this one. Like, I think it's the polar opposite of last year, where the Argonauts had nothing to play with after Labor Day. They came out and they threw 6 interceptions, 9 turnovers in total. The Alouettes were the hot team going into the game. They walked into BMO Field and they were the ones that made the way to the Grey Cup. I think it's going to be the complete opposite this year. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think the Alouettes are going to throw 6 interceptions, 9 turnovers in total. But I just think we've already talked about how the Alouettes haven't been playing good enough lately. They've been like the Lions the last 6-7 weeks, where they've been average at best. And I really don't think, I mean, I know the Riders did it, but that was only after 1 week. I don't think you can go 4 or 5 weeks with playing really meaningless football and then all of a sudden just turn on a switch and in the Eastern final and be like, yeah, we're playing great football. We're going to go to the Grey Cup. So I think just especially after what they did last week, and let's not forget, too, guys, that the Argos had 3 points after the third quarter. That was because they didn't have the ball, or the first quarter. They didn't have the ball pretty much the entire first quarter. But in the final 3 quarters, they scored 55 of their 58 points. I really believe they're going to carry that over. And as much as many people aren't going to want to hear that, I do believe they're going to represent the Eastern Division in the Grey Cup next week in Vancouver.
Coach, who do you got?
I got Toronto going for the W. I think that Toronto's front line, battle tested. They're going to be ferocious. And I think both games is going to come down to who can win inside the box. Is it going to be Montreal's O-line and their run game going up against Toronto's D-line and their backers, or is it in the West, it's going to be who can the Riders' front line stop Brady from running the damn ball? That both games, this is going to be a good one to see. But I'm going to go with Toronto.
Yeah, very defensive matchup, both of them. But Shane,
I'm
who you
going
got?
Montreal. Toronto relied a lot on the big play against Ottawa. They took advantage of Money Hunter not being experienced at safety, kind of caught him flat-footed a couple of times. I don't think that's going to be the case with Montreal. But I agree in terms of inside the box. I think the trenches will decide this game. that front seven for Toronto is arguably the best front seven in the league.
Robbie Smith sure showed up pretty fast.
Yeah, and we know Montreal's offensive line has had troubles early in the year. But I think this has probably been this should be the healthiest Montreal team we've seen since like week 11. So I don't know how much that will play into a fact, but I think playing at home, you have arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks who's been in this situation before as your offensive coordinator with Calvillo. I think you have the pieces. I think it's gonna be a close game. I think it's like a field goal or two. I don't think it's more than a touchdown, but I have Montreal winning at home and going to BC as the East host or the East representative.
I think it's crazy that if you asked us 8 weeks ago who we'd pick between Toronto and Montreal, it would have been, I think, a clean sweep. But as I said, I think Toronto is a very dangerous team after last Saturday. I think the way that they're able to win, the way they've been doing all year long, is really going to be a factor for them in this game. And I think, you mentioned about Montreal getting healthy a little bit, but I think I would be curious if Cody's 100% rather than 80, 75%. I don't know if Cody's 100% healthy, and I think with that pass rush, if they're able to get home to Cody, is just going to play a big part in this game and being able to affect him, not really be able to get much going on. You look at we talked about Austin Mack. I think Austin Mack has less than 10 catches since he's returned to the CFL. I know he was obviously hurt for a period of time, but very quiet. Obviously, we know they don't have Tyson Philpott. Cole Speaker has kind of taken up that almost number one receiver type role for them now. But I think Toronto, man, they also the weapons that they have. They don't necessarily. I've always said that I think that they need another receiver, a true number one. But they have a bunch of number twos and threes that just make plays, and Chad's able to get them the ball. I'm going to go with Toronto as well, but I think it's crazy to think that where we came from. Just because Montreal hasn't necessarily played good in the last 6 or 7 weeks, it's not their fault. They kind of had to play with the cards that they're dealt. They closed out the division how early and kind of had to take their foot off the gas. Now is it going to be extremely hard? I think yes, and that's probably why I have more confidence in Toronto to, as Blake said, just flip a switch into the East Final and try to get to the Grey Cup. I think it's going to be a little bit too hard for them, but at the same time, they've been there and done that. So maybe it's a familiar territory and they're comfortable in this type of situation. So who knows? I'll go with Toronto and we'll see what happens. Let's get, I guess, to the West Final. Coach, let's start with you. What are your thoughts? And I'm guessing you're going with your Riders, but what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are both back ends gotta play well. I'm thinking Winnipeg's secondary's got to play well. So they're going to win the game, but our secondary is going to play even better. I'm content and I'm comfortable with that. Now the front line, we are shaky at times. We've had some injuries over the season. We've had to move people around, but this might be the chance where we can catch them slipping. Everybody inside the box has got to do their job. A lot of great gap play. You got to be able to stop Brady. Don't let Brady bounce outside. And for God's sake, do not let him get in the passing game. Just hit him early and force him to fumble. If Brady fumbles, that fucks with the confidence. We saw that in the Grey Cup. When you hit your helmet hits the ball, Brady's gonna fumble. Everybody got a gang tackle, so it should be a good one going for Riders.
Riders. Shane, who you got?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Coach in terms of the running backs are going to show up. It's going to be what quarterback can take advantage of it and make the most out of the passing game. I'm taking Winnipeg. I think the experience is going to be the biggest difference maker in this. And again, BC didn't really force Trevor Harris to win the game for Saskatchewan. He was able to rely on the running game quite heavily. I think Winnipeg, just like Saskatchewan, they're going to try to force the quarterbacks to win the game, and I have troubles trusting Trevor Harris to be able to finish drives when they're down in distance. Right, if it's second and long and they can't hand it off to Alette or to the Rock, and he's forced to throw the ball. And can he finish those drives? Like obviously, if they can force those second and long situations, I think it becomes a Winnipeg's game to win. And you have to think this is probably the last ride for this Winnipeg group. They don't want to end it with a loss on home turf to the Rough Riders, so they're going to be extra motivated to play. Caleros, Jefferson, Stanley, but I think it's gonna be a close game. But I have Winnipeg winning. I think Brady's gonna put up a game, and I think like Kenny Lawler is gonna be kind of that difference maker in the passing game.
Mm-hmm.
Before Blake goes, I'm gonna go on a limb here. I'm gonna predict the right side of the screen is picking the Riders. Blake,
I'd be
am
wrong.
I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
All right, buddy. Tell me why you're picking the Riders.
I am picking the Riders, and I'm going to use a lot of Shane's points against him. Like, I think Shane said this might be the last ride for this Winnipeg team. I think that the Bombers know that. The Bombers know that they're getting older, but the Riders know that too. Like, they know that this is arguably the best shot out of the 5 that someone has of taking down the Bombers at their home field. Roland Milligan is going to make a big play, I think, near the end of the game, and he might steal the game from the Bombers. It'll be an Argonauts versus Riders breakup.
I love that, Blake. It was not a shock though, to be honest, because it would be a cold day in hell before you picked Winnipeg. Let's just be honest there. I think I'm going Winnipeg. I think it's probably a little bit different than what I think Coach mentioned of trying to stop Brady and really punishing Brady and wanting to slow him down. I think Brady's going to get his. I think where Saskatchewan is going to be able to keep this game close and keep it interesting and late is their defense and being able to not let Zach Collaros and that receiving core be able to do anything downfield. As Shane kind of said, with Kenny Law maybe making a big play, I kind of like Saskatchewan's secondary versus the Bombers' weapons and what they're going to be able to do downfield. And if they're able to get pressure on Zach, who where Zach's going to be. If he does escape, he's obviously willing and able to, and will pick up crafty first downs. But he's not looking to, and he's not a threat to. So if their D line can get some pressure, I think is a big factor. But I'm going to go with Winnipeg because they've been there, they've done that, and I think kind of the opposite of Blake, that they feel that this is their last opportunity to kind of close out here and try to get one more Grey Cup with this core group of guys. And as I said from the beginning, as long as they have Mike O'Shea, Brady Oliveira, they are fine in that organization. And they're going to be relevant for a long time, I would imagine. So I'll go with the Bombers. I would think this game's going to be close. Just these two teams have matched up pretty well all year. I think Saskatchewan got the first one, then Winnipeg obviously got the Labor Day Banjo Bowls. But if I'm not mistaken, the Banjo Bowl was the closer one, and I think even both of them were close. So like these teams have played really tight games all year long, and once again, probably won't come down to probably one score as well. So Blake, I know you got to get out of here, buddy. What are your thoughts before you do?
I'm excited for these games. As much as it kind of pains me to say this, I think that these are the 4 best teams battling for the chance to go to the Grey Cup. I'm excited for the games, and very quickly before I do go, I think the Sun win the Natty. It's been pretty clear how much BC and Saskatchewan, for that matter, have dominated Ontario ever since they changed the format. I don't think that's going to change, and for the second time in 3 years, as much as I hate to say it, I think the Okanagan Sun are going to be national champions.
Oh, Shane says no. He says his St. Clair, the St. Clair Saints.
Yeah, they're part of St. Clair College. I think that's going to be a difference for the OFC is that you're starting to see more of it. Like they're introducing the Sioux Cougars next year. Out of the college, out of the Sioux. Sault Ste. Marie, just for people who don't know what the Sioux is short for. My bad. For I'm talking to a bunch of West Coasters. But
Coach like the Sioux.
it's the Greyhounds. If you follow the CHL, the Greyhounds. Yeah, there's a college out there. It's Sault Ste. Marie College. The Cougars are joining next year. The college format, and I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, like Okanagan was like one of the first CJFL teams to actually kind of introduce that model where they partner. I don't know if they still do, but I remember when I started playing in the CJFL, there was talk that they were going to partner with a college in Okanagan. And they've had a lot of success into doing it. St. Clair became a thing. And they're easily the best team in the OFC. I know that there's been talks about the Sooners pairing up with Algonquin College in Ottawa. I don't know where those lines are going, but they've definitely worked hand in hand over the last couple of years. But I think St. Clair is going to put up a bigger fight. I think it's going to be a close game. I mean, I think they beat London. It was like 53-6 or something before going on to beat the Sooners. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a close game. I think St. Clair is going to take ownership of the Canadian Bowl and bring it back to the OFC.
I would say too, Blake, obviously I'm riding with Oki as well, being a BC boy. Noah, their running back, obviously star running back, is banged up here and really has been on somewhat of a pitch count. Looking back to the Canadian Bowl, he did have 18 carries, but he was held under 100 yards, only one touchdown, and he's the guy that broke like Jamel Lyles' BCFC records, Andrew Harris's BCFC records. So he was having a phenomenal year and it's kind of slowed down. Now whether that's due to more of an injury than anything else. Curious, but having to travel across the country, which they're not used to doing, and having to play a game and win one, I'm interested to see how it turns out for them. But that's another one I think is. I wonder when the kickoff is because it's Saturday as well. But
I think it's like 1 p.m.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like 10 o'clock our time.
Yeah, like it's early afternoon for us. It's before the OUA final.
Right. Okay. All right, Blake, get out of here, buddy. Go break a leg or whatever you're doing. Reffing.
It sounds like you had a rink, so you're doing something with
Yeah, I am. So I gotta run now. I'll see you guys next week for the show, and then we'll be in person 8 days from now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Have fun, Blake.
I just want to mention, I think one thing that needs to be talked about in terms of specifically, I mean, it's for both games, but I think the health of the quarterbacks is something that should be talked about in terms of a determining factor, kind of like that X factor. Which backup can lead a team? Like which backup gives their team the best chance to win if their starter goes down?
So the Chad Kelly.
Yeah, I think like if you look at Montreal with Davis Alexander, Toronto with Arbuckle, Saskatchewan with Pedersen, and then Winnipeg with Strevla. I think Winnipeg's the worst of the three.
I agree. I think it's probably Davis Alexander.
Yeah, I think Davis Alexander gives their team the best chance to win if their starter goes out. But I think that has to be like that. I don't. People don't want injuries to happen.
It's football.
But it's football. All four quarterbacks have been out of the game, like have missed time for various reasons. And we've seen all four teams struggle during those periods. I think that
two of them are veterans.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a talking point that will be discussed if one or more quarterbacks end up getting hurt.
Yeah, so I'm curious. I was actually kind of saving this question. I was hoping to get in before Blake left, talking about quarterbacks. One being Zach Collaros. I was curious on your guys' opinion, as Blake kind of said, of this kind of being the last run for them potentially. I agree somewhat, and as I don't know if it was Coach or Shane mentioned a few weeks ago of wanting to be 1 year early rather than be 1 year too late.
That was me.
In this situation, like say they don't win the Grey Cup, if you were the Bombers and Mike O'Shea in that front office, would you look now to get off Zach Collaros because of what this roster has and being able to kind of like reload almost on the fly. Like I said, if they have Brady Oliveira, Dalton Schoen's coming. Everyone forgets about Dalton Schoen. They're gonna have Dalton Schoen, Kenny Lawler, Nick Dempsey. They're gonna have 3 receivers to build around. They're gonna have a run game to build around. Now they have a lot to improve on. They have to probably get younger in the O line.
Yeah.
They probably have to find a running mate for Willie as he gets older as well. They have to probably replace Biggie, but they have a boundary corner, a young Canadian boundary corner to build on, and they have Michael Shea to has basically built the foundation of that program now. So like being able to reload on the fly and try to stay relevant, I think is a good time to like, Trey Ford's available and his brother's on the team. Would you look at like bringing Trey Ford? I don't know what Zach Collaros' contract is, but like telling Zach like, hey, this is not to bench you or take you off right now, but we are looking for the future, whether you like it or not, and this is our direction. Like
I've
2020.
been thinking about that a lot. Because I've been looking at like contracts because everything in the CFL is a 1 year deal unless stated otherwise. I've told that by multiple different communications people is that like unless they specify the term in their press release, it's assumed that it's a 1 year deal.
Okay.
But Calgary doesn't have a quarterback on the roster for next year. All 4 of them are UFAs. But I've been looking at kind of where Winnipeg might fall, even if they do win. Like I think Collaros is like going to be 36. He's not going to be a Ricky Ray who's going to play until he's 40, or Henry Burris who's going to play until he's 40. I would not be shocked that they walk away, no matter the outcome of this season. They walk away from Collaros unless he's willing to take a significant pay cut, and they go after Ford, who probably will be more like just around 150,000, maybe. Who gives that running ability, but a better throwing option than Strevler, and you have you have his brother right there.
I just thought because like the quarterback market could possibly be a little bit over saturated, overpopulated this offseason. Like, because like let's say for instance, like if Bo doesn't want to go back to Hamilton and he enters like the race of like, hey, I'm available because of like what he showed this year and being like, hey, like I can go still play, I can go join a team and like put up numbers to make you guys relevant. I know it didn't happen this year, but then we look at obviously like a guy like Jake Mayer. Jake Mayer's gonna probably go somewhere other than Calgary. Now, I'm not saying I'm a big believer in Jake Mayer, but like I would imagine organizations around the CFL, 1 or 2 of them will be a believer and look to take a shot or maybe even bring him in as competition. And then like obviously there's the Trey Ford, there's the VA situation. VA is gonna go somewhere. He'll obviously be the big ticket free agent, but there's like 3 guys.
So my hot take of the quarterback carousel, and I've been kind of battling with myself on how I should go about posting it because I think it's going to get a lot of negative reaction. Bo Levi heads back to Calgary. Trey goes to Winnipeg. VA goes back to Hamilton.
Wow.
Because I don't think Calgary wants to pay the price for VA, and I think Bo Levi will take a pay cut to go back to Calgary. Hamilton wants to win, and I think they're going to be willing to pay to win. And if I remember correctly, Scott Milanovich has worked with VA before, so there's that chemistry there. And Mayer ends up in Ottawa as the backup behind Brown.
See, and then there's like the not that Masoli maybe will be looked at as a starter, but Masoli I would imagine will probably get
I could see Mazzoli retiring, just like straight up retiring.
Yeah, I guess that's
like he's 35, he's 36, he's had a long series of injuries. He's a family man. He loves his family. I don't see him risking. I can see him going to coaching, like being a quarterback coach. But maybe I'm wrong. I just don't see him putting his body at risk again.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Just kind of his name popped up when you said you mentioned Ottawa there. But coach, before we kind of take over here too much, what are your thoughts on like the quarterback carousel and maybe Winnipeg trying to, as you mentioned, 1 year too early, 1 year be rather 1 year early than too late?
Well, I think it might be the right move. I think it's time with all the injuries that he has had over the last few years. I think it is time to take that in consideration. But if they still want to be with all the weapons they got, with Dalton coming back, Kenny, Nick, Brady, uh, Andre Wilson, man, that's a scary ass team. But you got to have the quarterback for it. I don't know if if they have to have the ultimate development team, player development to get Trey to be able to play in that offense, especially with Buck running it.
Yeah,
So,
you're definitely right on that because he's on a finished piece yet. Um, I
but
guess like, I just didn't know any other like possibilities other than Trey because like I feel like Zach would be like anybody else coming in would be like clear kind of they've been a starter before. Unlike Trey is kind of like that developmental piece, kind of where you can kind of like maybe
He's
spin in a certain
27.
way. But
Like
coach, what are your thoughts? Keep going.
would you say he's 23, 24?
he's 27.
Who?
Trey.
Are you serious?
He came out of school at 23. This one, Edmonton butchered his development.
God damn.
Like he's older, like he's the same age as Drew Brown. He came into the league the same year as Drew Brown. But Edmonton absolutely butchered his
Okay.
development.
Okay. I would say this, and this might be crazy. This might be a
Are you
crazy.
gonna say VA to Winnipeg?
No. Sign Bo and sign Trey.
In Winnipeg? Oh, he's 26. He'll be 27 in
You have Bo, you have Mike O'Shea, Buck Pierce, and Bo Levi. Develop this young man. Have Bo for the year. Have Bo to make another run. That they're unstoppable. That would be an unstoppable force. But you got to play Bo's style. You got to let Bo implement some of his stuff. He's like Aaron Rodgers. He's like all the other
He likes
quarterbacks.
this ayahuasca.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So, but you got to have Trey around motherfuckers that are going to develop him and lead him. And then let ease Trey into it when Bo choose to step away.
See, I think that just creates too much like.
Now, they're good. That's one thing Winnipeg's good. They're great at tuning out the noise.
Yeah, but it's just unnecessary. It's also an unnecessary waste of money, in my opinion. Because like how much? Like again, I think how much money are you spending on Bo? Put up 5,400 yards.
Coming off the MOP.
Like
he's
you,
gonna want
you
top
can
dollar.
easily ask.
They need to
ask for
upgrade
like
their O line.
$300K, right? You need to get younger, and you need to get younger at offensive line. Stanley Bryant's not going to play forever, as much as I think we all want him to. He's not going to play forever. You need to. They can't be spending top dollar for a quarterback right now, given all the other needs. And again, you still have Strevler under contract. Like Strevler, I think signed a 2-year or 3-year deal. Like he's still there next year.
I mean, I guess in a perfect world, you would want to see that the ultimate development for Trey. But
I think at this point, you like Trey. If Trey wants to be a starter, like it's put up or shut up time for him.
Yeah.
Right. Like this isn't like a Fajardo situation where like you're fine having him be your third quarterback, and you develop him, and he goes to another team and kind of takes more responsibility and goes to his third team and becomes a starter in his third team.
Eventually, you just run out of opportunities too.
Yeah.
Like Hamilton has already kind of seemed to make the decision that they're going to run with Powell and Tagovailoa next year. Maybe they bring back maybe they bring in a Boner or Tommy Stevens if they hit the market, or
if Trey doesn't go, I'll say this: if Trey doesn't go to Winnipeg, Cole, how would you feel if he went? Well, nah.
Well, that's the thing. BC will need a backup.
Yeah.
Because you're not.
I wouldn't like that because then his long-term goal would just be a backup. Like well, no, like that's the situation you'd be in.
But like, think about it. This is the same team that had Lule and Mike Riley.
Yes, but as we just talked about, like the politics, like they just paid Nathan. He's gonna get this long of a runway, regardless of what happens.
And but his runway is longer than his leash is longer than Trey's.
So,
But if you Trey
Trey would
goes
be
to a
like
team like,
helpless, basically.
but if you put Trey in a team like BC that has like a true starter, there's no QB controversy.
Good.
There's no put Trey in over Nathan. You're not having that conversation. Coaches aren't going to have to answer that question. There's not going to be consistent, unlike this VA Nathan thing. But what it does is it puts Trey in a situation where if Nathan goes down, he can then show that he can be a starter, just like Mike Riley did with Lula, and like we saw with Brandon Jennings before he injured his shoulder and couldn't throw worth shit anymore. And same thing with Drew Tate. Being a backup in the league isn't a bad thing. The thing with Trey Ford is that he was put in a situation where they didn't know what the hell they wanted to do with him. He started some games, had success, and then was turned into a backup, and they were wishy-washy on what they wanted to do. There was no clear plan.
Mm-hmm.
But every star quarterback in this league has started as a backup. And Trey Ford was not given that opportunity to truly develop as a backup before being a starter. And that's on Chris Jones. And I think for him, going to a place where he can be kind of the backup, he needs to go to a place where he's either the backup or the starter and doesn't have to worry about unnecessary quarterback competition. Where he can go in.
He backed up Cornelius for like a whole year.
Yeah, because Jones didn't want to play him, but there was still
Yeah, I know, but that's like why come be a backup more?
Because every quarterback needs it. The only difference is that all these quarterbacks that have been backups without the constant talk of them being the starter.
Yeah, I don't think so. Like injury, like unless injury happens, like that's basically the only guarantee he gets in.
But that's what I'm talking about, though, is that there's going to be no conversation around who the starter is in BC. He has not been no one talked about Drew Brown being the starter over Claros. No one talked about Bo Levi being the starter over Drew Tate or Kevin Glenn before they got hurt. No one talked about Trevor Harris being the starter over Ricky Ray or being the starter over Henry Burris when they were healthy. Trey Ford has never had that opportunity. Cody Fajardo, when he was in Toronto, NBC, was never considered to be a starter. There was no conversation of having them start over their current starters. Trey Ford has never been given that opportunity, and
why did Chris Jones what were the reasons why Chris Jones ruined his development in your opinion?
Because I don't think Chris Jones wanted he saw the upside.
That's why though. Like in my opinion, you learn by playing, whether it's trial by fire or trial by success.
For the most part, yeah. But I think
I love the idea of doing the whole Brady, Mahomes, Green Bay, come in, we'll draft you, we'll mold you up.
I mean, I think we've
such a one-off that it just doesn't happen. You learn by playing. So
to a certain extent, yes, but you still have to learn the game.
Think about Trey coming to BC, and he gets basically 5 reps or 5 reps.
He still needs to develop as a passer. He still needs to be able to read defenses. He's had none of that development.
You get that in game though.
But you don't.
No.
How many quarterbacks have? Look at Kyler Murray. Look at Justin Fields. Look at Mitch Trubisky. There is a list. There's a laundry list of quarterbacks that had success in college and got thrown. Bryce Young is a prime example of that in Carolina.
And you know why? Can I add why?
You're telling me that Mahomes,
they play with fucking tragic franchises. That's why.
And Edmonton's a tragic franchise.
But Shane has a point because all the
Edmonton is Carolina.
Shane, I agree with you, and I'm gonna double down with you on this one because they're all one read. They were all in one read offenses. They don't have to read multiple. They don't have multiple reads. That's what people don't get. Those guys and the Kyler Murrays, those guys, they were one read quarterbacks. Trey, I feel like he was just a one read guy. If it ain't there, take off.
VA was the same way when he came in the league.
Who's that?
It's pro football, man.
But it's not. But it's different.
If you have so let's say Nathan Rourke's your guy, right?
I got 5
Jordan
minutes and I'm
Maximic,
out.
Jordan Maximic works with him during the week. My point exactly. Being a backup quarterback, having experienced it, not at the professional level,
Mahomes,
the starter will get almost the majority of all the reps in team periods. You will throw on air, you will throw scout, and you will throw skelly.
and I think you're underestimating the importance of scout and the importance of film, especially
Yes.
from a developmental
Scouts, I love scout, but
especially from a developmental standpoint.
It's mental
Because
repetition.
again, a lot of these guys coming out of college, like you're telling, like Mahomes and Love don't see the success they have starting day one.
Andy Reid.
They went to
But he
West
got to
Coast.
sit behind Alex Smith and actually learn
Yeah.
and understand NFL defenses.
And he's in the West Coast offense, the most complicated offense ever created, but the most successful. He went to Matt LaFleur, who runs a zone blocking scheme. He was under the Shanahan tree. You look at Andy Reid. Andy Reid comes from the Bill Walsh tree. That's just but Andy Reid is a wizard.
For every CJ Stroud or Jaden Daniels, there are laundry list of quarterbacks who just aren't good, like who just come in day one. Daniel Jones is another example.
The biggest example.
Like there are quarterbacks who come in who have high expectations and they aren't developed. Right? They're just thrown to the wolves and expected to pick up on things day one.
You take Josh Allen out of Buffalo and you put him in Carolina. Do you think he's going to have the same success?
That's my point, but I will digress.
He don't want to hear that. He don't want to hear about
it. Things are situational, boys.
I agree with you on that.
So Sam Darnold's a perfect example. If he gets drafted to Buffalo versus Josh Allen and they trade places, we've seen Buffalo had a structure for him versus Sam Darnold and the Jets didn't have a structure. Edmonton didn't have a structure for him.
But that's what I'm saying.
And no other team is going to have a structure for him as a backup quarterback when you have a star quarterback.
We don't necessarily need a structure.
Who wants to develop your backup quarterback when you just paid a guy $500K
because
for the next 2 to 3 years?
It's been proven.
You're not going to do it. It's pro football.
But it needs to happen. It's been proven that
but
you can't win.
We got to like
your starting quarterback.
It to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Your starting quarterback is not going to play 18 games.
I agree.
So you need a quality starting caliber backup. So if you're not spending time to develop a backup, all you're doing is shooting yourself in the foot. Because realistically, think about it.
We've seen this for how many years, and it's pro football. This is what happens. This is why quarterbacks. This is why it's a problem everywhere. It's a problem in the NFL. It's a problem everywhere that there's not a developmental system for backup quarterbacks. It's because it's pro football. You're going to want to
and that's the problem.
Time with your starting quarterback because he's your starter. He's not your backup.
And that's the problem. But that's exactly the problem, though, is that every other position.
It's not going to change, though. When these guys make millions of dollars, you're going to invest in the guy that makes
it's changed over the last
millions of dollars.
It's changed over the last 20 years because it wasn't always like this. Hell, it's changed in the last 15 years. Think about it. Think about the quarterback tree from the early 2010s Argonauts. You had once Ricky came in, you had Collaros. 3 of them are in the finals. You have Fajardo, Harris, and Collaros. From that one like 4-year period of Toronto of Argonauts. You have 3 quarterbacks from that period.
I understand, but that's once. You named once, and it's been 15 years.
Henry Burris,
Drew
Tate,
and what, you named BC Lions. Name the BC Lions, too. Okay.
Yeah, but BC Lions, you went from Lule to you traded Mike Riley because you had Lule, but you had Mike Riley. You also developed Brandon Jennings, and Jennings was looking like a quality quarterback until he burst out his shoulder. Same thing with Drew Tate. But look at Montreal. Look how Montreal struggled after Calvillo retired. You need quality backups, and to sit here and say that it's pro football, that's part of the problem.
Because
and it's only within the last 10 to 15 years where it's really, really become a problem.
I just don't get it because it's like you said it's time to nut up or shut up for Trey, but then he also needs to develop.
Yeah, he either needs to go to a team that will make him a starter and make him the starter, or he needs to go to a team that will make him the backup and let him just focus on his game. Going to another situation like Edmonton does nothing for him, where there's constant question marks and constant talking about, is he good enough? Or are they going to start another quarter? Like, to sit here and say that Edmonton didn't, like, the noise and the immaturity and the bullshit that Edmonton did with Trey Ford during his tenure there, like, he can't go into another situation like that and expect to succeed. He needs to go somewhere where a team is either is direct, to the point, and consistent with whatever their plan is with him. He's either the starter or he's the backup. He is not going in there to be an open competition quarterback. And if he is, you are either naming him the starter or the backup by week 1, and you are sticking with it. There is no flip-flopping. There is no, hey, we're going to give this guy 2 games, and if he doesn't win, we're going to go to this guy. None of it. There can't be that with Trey Ford. It's the same thing with VA. And VA has been dealing with it since he's coming to the CFL.
Since it's the CFL, it could happen. But if Trey was looking to go anywhere to be a backup, he's failing himself. He's failing.
Maybe short term, but definitely not long term.
Well, how?
Take a quick loss, but then in the long run, it helps you, because how long are you trying to play? Number one, are you trying to play for a long time, or are you trying to just shut the naysayers now and in a win now mode? Are you in a win now mode? Is that what you're trying to go
play?
to?
Like
Trevor Harris wasn't a starter until he was like 28 or 29.
And you don't really enter your prime until your 30s.
So, like, from a longevity perspective, if you're Trey, yeah, you want to be a backup for a year or two. You save your body for 2 years. You get to develop, you get to learn, you get to work on your skill, and then you get to go into as a starter, and then you have 2 years less. You know, you're not getting hit in practice. You're not throwing the ball as hard in practice. You're not throwing it as much in practice, right? Like, so that's 2 years of wear and tear that's really isn't on your body.
Are you trying to make highlights, or are you trying to make a legacy? Are you trying to play and be in the running every year after you paid your dues? Because Trey's never really had to pay his dues in a way where I guess, they shot his development. And I'll personally say this. Hold on, I'll say this. I think Chris Jones got him, but I think he didn't know what he was doing with him. As far as, I don't know why I have this guy, but I'm just going to draft him because he's the best player on the board. He had no intention. None. That's not his forte. And he had him around people that didn't know how to. Now, maybe some of it, I don't know the ins and outs. Some of it is Trey. Some of it is the Elks. It's both parties. How are you receptive? Are you to coaching? If a motherfucker's gonna try and teach me some shit but ain't never played the position, I'm not listening to you. So it's this is a tough choice, man. I still think he should go to Winnipeg. I think
it's Winnipeg or Hamilton and Bullies, but come to
I
BC, I would love that.
Again, I don't think Hamilton makes much sense, because it seems like they're Milanovich is all in on Powell. Right? Like, well, Powell.
Good luck to them then.
Like, Powell seemed to be the
have
next,
fun, Hamilton.
Like, and they seem to be really high on Tugga. So,
they want. Oh God, this one dude won't shut the hell up about.
So I'm just saying, like, I think if Trey Ford is looking outside of Edmonton, because personally I think he should just stay in Edmonton, and Edmonton should just commit to him. But if you're outside of Edmonton, there's three teams. It's gonna be BC as a backup, Winnipeg potentially, and then Calgary. Like, Ottawa, Brown is QB1. You're not coming to Ottawa to be QB1. If you're coming to Ottawa, you're being a backup. And who knows if they signed Tyree Adams.
He's nasty.
I don't know if they're committed to Crum long term right now. Like, I don't know. There's a lot up in the air in Ottawa. So Ottawa's off the list. Toronto, you're unless number 12 is out the door, you're not going to Toronto to be a starter.
Cole would like that.
you're not going to Montreal. They're committed to Fajardo and Davis Alexander. And maybe Senecal come the fall. And you're not going to Saskatchewan if you want to be a starter because they're committed to Harris. So Trey Ford has two options. He has one option to be a starter, and that's Edmonton. He's going to Winnipeg unless Collaros retires or is forced out and is walked. He's back up in BC, back up in Winnipeg, maybe if they depending on what they think of Strevler. Go into a quarterback competition potentially in Calgary, or sit behind VA for a couple of years in Calgary, or start in Edmonton potentially. Like Ford's starting. Like if you're a quarterback in this free agency class, it's not great for Ford because you also still have McLeod Bethel-Thompson. You have Jake Mayer. Like there's other guys that like could also take those spots. So like I don't think Ford doesn't have a lot of opportunities. So it's either walk away from football or accept a backup role for a year or two and reevaluate where you can be a starter in a year or two.
Okay.
Yeah, well, what I got from that conversation, boys, is Trey Ford's cooked. So let's move off that conversation then.
He's 26. He'll be 27.
I can't get on
fucked him.
And exactly, if Edmonton drafted him, who the fuck is going to want to take him and try to develop him outside of their starter? It's not going to happen. I agree. It's a problem. I agree. Playing the position as a quarterback, I agree.
I think there's
but guess what? It's pro football and it's been shown.
I mean, I think there's definitely teams that are willing to invest in having Trey Ford as a backup quarterback.
But truly develop him is what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think there's again. If to be fair, if I'm Saskatchewan, I'm taking Trey Ford as my backup over Shea. I rather develop Trey Ford over Shea Patterson.
The Lions don't even have a quarterback coach.
That's a different issue.
The Lions don't even have a quarterback coach.
But that's a different issue. But like if I'm Saskatchewan, I'm taking the guy who's played Canadian football. Like you're talking about teams not wanting to develop a second quarterback. They're developing quarterbacks to play a whole new different style of game. So yes, I'm going to take the Canadian who knows the game, who's been playing the game, and spend the time to develop him versus having to develop a quarterback who's never played the game.
I hear you. It hasn't happened.
All right.
It hasn't happened, and we're in a quarterback issue. And that's a big reason why.
I agree that it should happen, but it's just how are you gonna like? It's too hard in a season, man. Like you have their starter to prepare. How much you have to prepare your starter for one game, let alone having to try to prepare or develop your backup.
To be fair, if you have a quality starter, you're not spending that much time with him working on his techniques and stuff. You have, and again, this is maybe a coaching cap issue with the lack of quarterback coaches. But realistically, your starting quarterback is spending more time with an offensive coordinator than they are a quarterback coach in terms of game planning for the week.
But that's what I mean, though. We only have the one. We have Jordan Maximic. That's it.
Okay, again, that's a very specific situation. But if you're talking about the development of a player, if you're thinking about it, most teams have someone who spends time developing quarterbacks. If your team wants to decide that your OC is that guy, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, I think it's probably
obviously
bigger.
To say that doesn't happen in pro sports or in pro football, it does. But yes,
rarely.
If you're talking about reps, like if you're talking about first team reps and yes, your starting quarterback's going to take 95% of those first team reps. But if you're talking about mechanics and progressions and film and being able to read a defense, those are things that you can work on in scout, on 7-on-7, and if you're not doing that, that's a coaching issue and that needs to be addressed.
Yes, I hear all that, and I have experience with that. But when a coach comes up to you and he tells you to run this play because it's drawn on the card, or he wants you to throw here because they always throw this and they're hot. They read this one to this way. It doesn't help you though. It takes away from the natural reading it fluidly in a game situation. That's why I said
but that's the thing with
unfortunately
scouts.
for Trey, his expectations have been put on him so that when he has one bad game, it's the end of the world. But he should be able to go through a season, play, have bad games because it happens to every
Oh, I
quarterback,
agree,
and
100%,
learn on the job rather than
100% agree. But that's what
learning
I'm saying.
from a backup perspective. It's
No, but that's what I'm saying though. That's
you're
what I'm saying is that
handicapping him.
he needs to go to a situation where he's either the starter and doesn't have to worry about the guy over his shoulder and allowed to play and make mistakes, which there isn't many opportunities right now for that, or except that he's going to have to be a backup for a year or two. That's all I'm saying. Is that like he can't go to a situation like he was in Edmonton where he's looking over his shoulder every time he makes a bad throw.
Let's just leave it at this before we go too long. Edmonton has sincerely fucked up, and we'll end it at that. So, last thing that I want to talk with you boys is the possibility of Saskatchewan doing what Montreal did last year. Obviously, with Regina, Saskatchewan playing in the Canada West Hardy Cup final. A lot of things still have to be done, but I think it was a pretty good thing for Canadian football last year with Montreal taking home the Vanier and obviously Montreal winning the Grey Cup. But I just thought that would be another cool possibility. It's obviously very long off, but like I think it just adds to the fact of like having one big weekend to celebrate Canadian football needs to happen because if this would happen, imagine the party back home in Saskatchewan when they came back home with both trophies or whatever it may be. So just an interesting kind of thing that I was kind of keeping an eye on, and hopefully the Canada West season has been crazy. So I'm kind of like hoping that the craziness continues in U Sports, but
I think it's hey, St. Mary's beat CFF. They're playing Bishops, and then you got 1-2 in the OUA with Laurier and Western. So
I believe, unfortunately, RSAQ and Can West play in the UTEC Bowl, so it's gonna be a tough one
you're
for
gonna
whoever
have
comes out of Laval or Montreal.
Yeah, it's gonna be Laval, Montreal, or the Battle of Saskatchewan.
So
which is unfortunate, but like it's either that or it's gonna be the bat. Like it's the problem with AUS being such a crappy division.
Yeah, it is.
Like in my opinion, like AUS and RSCQ to just merge, it would make AUS a lot better. But I don't know. I still think
would that be 8 teams?
9, because it's 4 in the ASU and 5 because it's Montreal, Laval, McGill, Concordia, and Sherbrooke in the RSCQ, and then it's Bishop, Santa Fe, St. Mary's, and Acadia in AUS, I believe. Can't remember. Mount Allison. So it'd be 10.
Right. Has that ever been pitched or talked about?
I've heard that there has been some dialogue where they'd merge. It's travel. That's the big thing, right? Like traveling from like Santa Fe to Montreal.
Yeah.
Right? It's
school budget.
Yeah. Like it's like you don't really see Western coming to Ottawa or Ottawa going to Western very often. Like it's just
because like in three conferences you could do what CJFL does and kind of rotate who gets that bye and like have the 2 conferences play each other. The one other conference or whatever gets the bye to the kind of like the Bandy
it'd be
Cup
like the Memorial Cup, right? Where you get the host city or the host conference or the host city would get like a bye to the finals.
Right. But it's pretty much it's not, I don't want to say it's like a free pass to the Vanier, but like whoever plays the AUS. When's the last time an AUS team is represented in the
like
Vanier?
2002.
Yeah.
When I think Santa FX won. It was the UTEC. It was Coach UTEC. Was it UTEC? No, not UTEC. Maybe it was UTEC. Oh no, it was the Santa FX coach who died in like I think 2019 or 2020.
Question for Coach, as I'm sure he's probably like, what the McGill Santa Fe? But Coach, you watch any U Sports at all?
I fought a little bit.
A little bit? Yeah, I was gonna. You got to be the Battle of Saskatchewan, man.
I've heard.
It should
it's
be
in Kingston, and like if I didn't have to work that weekend, I might have to drive out to Kingston to watch the game.
When's the Vanier? Sorry.
23rd. So weekend after the Grey Cup.
Yeah, that's criminal. It doesn't happen the same weekend.
It should. It used
Double the
to.
football.
Yeah, that's criminal. It
I
used
mean,
to
I
happen, man.
think it was during the 90s. It would be the Canadian Bowl on Friday, Vanier on Saturday, and the Grey Cup on Sunday, all in the same city.
I went to the 2011 Vanier and Grey Cup, which was freaking sweet. It was all in one weekend. It was so much fun, man.
Yeah, because
And then
I think
I
the
don't know if
last one was either
how many
like
more years it happened.
2012 or 2013 was the last time the Grey Cup and the Vanier Cup were synced.
Toronto, right?
Yeah, I think for the 100th. I think the reason why they stopped it was because apparently it was the travel for schools.
What?
I guess I don't know, but my understanding was that schools were having it like finding it difficult to have their students like travel to the game.
Aren't they traveling the next week?
Yes, but you're not competing with the Grey Cup travel, right? And you can put it into like university towns because it's in Kingston, right? You're putting it with the you can put it in friggin' like you can have Laval host it, you can have Sherbrooke or Concordia host it, like you can have Saint FX host it. You having it lined up with the Grey Cup, it kind of takes away from those type of events from those schools, which is why they stopped doing it apparently.
That's tough. I'm sure that, like, I guess that makes sense because you're kind of handcuffed to the CFL in a way, but like at the same time, like, is that a bad thing necessarily? I don't.
Personally, I would like to see a U Sports. Like I would like to have the East versus West Bowl done during Grey Cup weekend as like a
Instead of in
U
the spring.
Sports All-Star game
Yeah.
on the Saturday, which again kind of takes away from like again it's kind of like the Pro Bowl where like teams that are participating in the Vanier Cup may not be able to participate, but I think it'd be a great way to kind of connect the two
Back together.
yeah, and like it also and even hell you can even say hey these are your 2025 or like the next year's or that current draft class if you wanted, or you can just do all-stars.
Right.
Well, that's one thing I forgot to mention during the news and notes was the kicker for Manitoba, the I can't remember her
Maya
name.
Turner.
Yeah, being named Canada West All-Star.
Yeah, big time congratulations for her. I think she was 75% on the season. I didn't
She
see her.
led Can West in field goal percentage.
Yeah, man, good stuff for her.
Seems to have a decent leg on her.
She does, and like sweet that like kind of Dobie has like a ton of confidence in her too. Like there's some like bigger kicks she had to go out there and make this year, which was cool and good thing to see. I'm curious to know though, because I know she did use up some eligibility. If like that was her last year or not, or if she's coming back.
I thought she had one more, but I mean, it's not really eligibility; it's age, right? You have to be 24 and under to play in U Sports.
Right. But
it's not like the NCAA where you can be 30 and playing in your 8th season of college football.
Good for her though. She continues to do tremendous things and be a trailblazer for girls that want to get into football. But
I'm
boys,
curious on if a team takes a chance on bringing her into camp.
I was gonna say the same thing, but I was gonna kind of leave that conversation alone because I'm sure that'll be hopefully something for her to next year if she's back and have another good season. Then maybe she makes it known that she actually wants to do this as a professional, which would be
cool. I'm just curious on where her thought process is like going forward. If it's like something that she wants to take professionally, or if she's just going to stop after college.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know for sure.
We should get her on the pod during the off season.
Yeah, that'd actually probably be a good idea to do, honestly. Maybe we'll actually do something like next week or two here. Really good idea, Shane. Anyways, boys, almost about 2 hours. So I'll let you guys go. I'm sure it's probably, is it 11, just about 11 o'clock in
20 to 11, yeah.
What time do you go to work tomorrow?
I don't. I'm
You're
off.
Oh, well then you're good then.
Yeah,
Shane, what
I'm
can the
off,
people
luckily.
find from you, buddy?
Yeah, Twitter or X as always. Not much going on right now, but with there's a lot of free agency stuff building up, and then obviously some draft stuff. I've been trying to find as much film as I can. Might have to start reaching out to some schools to get some film. Just kind of looking over the top 20 from the scouting bureau. Their winner ranking is usually in mid to late January, so kind of take a look at the prospects and kind of get ready for the combine and free agency. Obviously,
What are you doing on Saturday? You just watching the games?
I'm working this Saturday,
Oh,
unfortunately,
okay, yeah.
so I might have the game on at work. But I'm definitely going to be checking. Like I'm definitely going to have the updates going and um, seeing. I'm curious. I think I might try to watch the McGill Laval game because I think it's late. I thought it was like 7 o'clock in Laval, but I might be mistaken. So I'll have to double check that.
Okay, I was gonna say
But
I was gonna do another space this Saturday, kind of like in between the games if you're free, jump on. But all
I mean, I
good.
should be because I'm only working till like 4:30. So
Okay, buddy. Well, I'll shoot you a DM and let you know when I'm thinking. But anyways, bud, have a good weekend, and we'll chat this weekend, I'm sure.
have a good night, guys.
All right.
All right, that was Shane Ryan of 13th Man Sports. That leaves two. That leaves two of us, Coach.
We last
What
two
can the
standing.
people expect from you? Got anything going on? Are you traveling this weekend, or are you just hunkering down till Grey Cup?
I'm hunkering down till Grey Cup. Me and the boy, we finna do our thing, and we're gonna get
Yeah.
on there, watch it, and we're gonna have fun with it this weekend.
I don't know if I've asked you yet. Are you coming solo to Grey Cup, or are you bringing the little guy?
I'm bringing my son, my daughter, and my mom is flying up.
Haha, let's go, Coach. That's dope.
My mom's
That's
flying
dope.
up from Florida.
You guys are gonna have a good time. Have they been to Vancouver yet? No, right?
No, they haven't been to Vancouver yet. So my mom used to always go up to Vancouver a lot in her younger days. So this is the opportunity for her to kind of, be happy and kind of get a nice little vacation on son for once.
That's cool. That's hilarious that coming here back in the day. A small world. But anyways, Coach, you know where the people can find you. I saw Deep in the Game starting to come out as well and all that sort of stuff. Damon Allen, I believe you sat down with.
Yep.
All your social medias, as always, Coach Phil Reacts, Twitter, Instagram, Deep in the Game, Instagram as well. Other than that, Coach, enjoy the weekend. I was about to say go Riders. I can't do it though, Coach. Anyways, enjoy the weekend, my man, and I'm sure we'll talk this weekend.
Yes, sir. I'll see you soon.
All right, that is Coach Phil. Coach Phil Reacts, all that good stuff. That leaves just myself to sign off for the night. Like, comment, subscribe, as always. Be greatly appreciated. As I see my girlfriend, who's probably watching, is being, shouldn't say nosy, but wanting me to come eat dinner. So that's what I will do. I appreciate you guys for tuning into the show here tonight. That leaves one last show to do next weekend. One more show. We will know who's in the Grey Cup, who's in 111th Grey Cup. We will have some stuff to talk about and then stuff to plan, I'm sure. Coach Shane will be traveling out west to visit Blake and I and the Grey Cup for Grey Cup week. I believe the fellas are supposed to land Friday, if I'm not mistaken. So business as usual. Wednesday will be the Wednesday show, weekly show. The fellas will land. I know we are planning to do some sort of video / show from Grey Cup. So stay tuned for that. And we should have a ton more throughout Grey Cup week next week. As I mentioned, you guys can find us Twitter Spaces on Saturday afternoon at some point talking some Canadian football. Other than that, guys, enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday.